The knock came at exactly dawn, not loud, not rushed, but precise, like someone who believed they owned the door. I knew something was wrong before I even opened my eyes. Men who come with confidence at that hour either carry a warrant or a lie. I rolled out of bed, already alert, every instinct from years in the team snapping awake like a switch had been flipped inside my chest. Then I heard my son's voice from the hallway, small, confused, and too close to the front door. "Dad, who is it?" That was the moment everything turned cold. I moved fast, silent, across the floor and reached the hallway just as the front door creaked open a few inches. 3 men stood outside, dressed like officers, badges clipped on, dark uniforms, posture stiff but not trained, not right. One of them smiled at my son. "We are here to take you somewhere safe, buddy." My blood froze but my mind sharpened. No agency sends strangers to a child without paperwork, without warning, without a parent present. I stepped into view, slow, controlled, and deadly calm. "Step away from him." They looked at me, and for a split second I saw it, the flicker, the hesitation, the calculation. Not real. The man in front recovered quickly, flashing his badge again. "Sir, we have orders." "No, you don't." My son backed toward me, sensing the shift in the air. The second man tried to move past the door, pushing it wider like he thought force would make this real. That was his first mistake. I closed the distance in one step, grabbed his wrist and twisted. The crack echoed before he even realized what happened. He screamed, dropping to his knees. Everything exploded after that. The third man lunged toward my son, and that was all I needed to see. No more doubt, no more restraint. I moved like I had 100 times before, fast, efficient, unstoppable. Elbow to throat, knee to ribs, hand locking his arm and snapping it sideways. Another crack, another scream. The first man reached for something at his waist, maybe a weapon, maybe a bluff. Didn't matter. I slammed him into the wall outside the door hard enough to shake the frame and drove my forearm across his collarbone until I felt it give. Silence hit like a wave, broken only by their groans on the ground. My son stood frozen behind me. I turned slowly, scanning the street, empty, too empty. This wasn't random. This was planned. And someone thought they could walk into my home and take my son. I crouched down, grabbing the nearest fake badge, holding it up to the light. Cheap, wrong, poorly engraved. Amateurs with confidence. That's the dangerous kind. I looked back at my son, forcing my voice to soften. "Go to your room, lock the door, and don't come out until I tell you." He nodded, eyes wide, and ran. Good. Now it was just me and them. I leaned closer to the man, still conscious, his face pale, sweat pouring down. "Who sent you?" He shook his head, trying to act tough, but fear was already breaking through. "You made a very bad decision coming here." I stood up slowly, already knowing this wasn't over. People like this don't act alone. And if they were willing to come to my door, then someone out there believed I wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first one tried to crawl away, dragging his useless arm across the concrete, leaving a thin dark streak behind him like a trail begging to be followed. I stepped on his back and he froze instantly, the fight draining out of him as fast as it had come. "Nobody moves?" My voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. Men like these understand tone better than words. The one with the broken wrist was shaking now, breath coming in sharp, panicked bursts, his tough act gone, replaced with raw fear. "You picked the wrong house." I crouched again, closer this time, letting them see my eyes, letting them understand exactly who they had walked up on. "Who sent you?" Still silence. But silence speaks if you know how to listen. Their eyes kept flicking, not to each other but down the street. Waiting. That was all I needed. Backup. Or a watcher. Either way, this wasn't finished. I stood up and dragged the first man by his collar, throwing him against the side of their own vehicle. The logo on the door caught my attention. Some fake department name slapped on cheap vinyl, slightly peeling at the edges. Sloppy. Everything about this operation screamed rushed and overconfident. That meant desperation. And desperation meant someone higher up was pushing hard. You don't improvise a child grab like this unless you're on a clock. I pulled my phone out and snapped pictures, fast faces, badges, the car, the plate. Evidence. Because this wasn't just about stopping them. This was about ending whoever sent them. One of them finally broke. We were paid, that's it man, just paid. By who? I don't know. I slammed his head lightly against the car, not enough to knock him out, just enough to remind him pain was still an option. Think again. A name came out, half choked, barely a whisper. Marlowe. That name hit something in the back of my mind, not clear yet but familiar, like a shadow you can't quite place. Where do I find him? No response. I tightened my grip on his collar and he gasped. Warehouse near the old rail yard. Good. Very good. I let him drop. Now listen carefully. If any of you move, if any of you even think about coming back here, I won't stop at Broken Arms. They believed me. I could see it in the way they avoided my eyes, in the way their bodies stayed still even as pain tore through them. I stepped back inside and locked the door immediately, sliding every bolt into place. Then I moved. Fast. Training took over like muscle memory, guiding every step. Windows checked. Back door secured. Curtains drawn just enough. I grabbed my safe, opened it and checked what I needed. Not panic. Preparation. There's a difference. My son's door was still closed. Good. I knocked softly. It's me. The lock clicked and he opened just enough to see me. Are they gone? For now. He looked at me, searching my face, trying to understand something far too big for him. Were they real cops? No. That answer settled something in him but replaced it with something else. Fear. I crouched down to his level, placing a hand on his shoulder. Listen to me very carefully. You're safe. As long as I'm here, nobody is taking you. Nobody. He nodded slowly, holding onto that promise like it was the only solid thing left in his world. I stood up and closed his door again. Then I went back to the front window, watching. Waiting. 5 minutes. 10. 15. A black SUV rolled slowly past the house, not stopping, just gliding like a predator testing the edge of its territory. There it was. The watcher. They saw. They always see. Good. Let them. I stepped away from the window, already planning the next move. Sitting and waiting was not an option. People who escalate this far don't stop. They regroup. They adapt. And they come back harder. I wasn't going to let that happen. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and one last look at the house. Everything in me pulled towards staying. Protect. Hold the line. But another part, stronger, colder, knew the truth. The threat doesn't end here. It ends where it started. I walked back to my son's door, opening it just enough. I have to step out for a bit. You stay here, doors locked, don't open for anyone except me. What if they come back? They won't. And even if they try, they won't get in. He hesitated, then nodded again, stronger this time. I'll be fine. I allowed myself 1 second to look at him, really look, memorize that face, that trust. Then I stepped out and locked everything behind me. The street felt different now. Alive. Watching. I moved to my car but paused just before opening the door, scanning reflections, windows, rooftops, mirrors. Nothing obvious. That didn't mean safe. It meant careful. I got in and started the engine, pulling away smoothly, not fast, not slow, just another car leaving a quiet neighborhood. But inside everything was moving fast. Marlowe. Warehouse. Rail yard. Fake cops. Child grab. Pieces of a puzzle forming something ugly. Something organized. This wasn't random. This wasn't petty crime. This was targeted. And that meant one thing. Someone wanted leverage. And my son was the key. The drive took 20 minutes, but my mind ran miles ahead, connecting dots, digging through memory. Marlowe. Then it hit. A contractor years back, overseas logistics guy, shady deals, always walking the line between legal and not. Disappeared after an operation went bad. Rumors said he pivoted into something darker, trafficking information people whatever paid. If it was the same man, then this just got bigger. Much bigger. I reached the edge of the old rail yard, rusted tracks stretching into the distance, broken buildings scattered like forgotten bones of a dead industry. Perfect place for something like this. Hidden in plain sight. I parked a distance away and stepped out, keeping low, moving along the edge of the structures. There. A warehouse with lights on. Movement inside. Two men outside smoking, weapons slung casually, not trained posture but armed. I watched for a full minute, studying patterns, entry points, exits. No rushing. Rushing gets you killed. I moved around the side, finding a broken window just high enough to look through. Inside was chaos. Crates, tables, equipment, and more men than I expected. And at the center, a figure standing calm, giving orders. Even from here I could tell. Confidence, control. That had to be him. Marlowe. My jaw tightened. You made a mistake coming after my family. A deep, quiet kind of anger settled in my chest, the kind that doesn't explode. It finishes things. I slipped away from the window, already mapping out the next move. This wasn't going to be a fight. This was going to be a message. Clear. Permanent. No one touches my son and walks away. No one. The wind cut through the broken rail yard, carrying dust and the faint metallic smell of rust, but beneath that there was something else. Movement. Voices. Engines idling somewhere deeper in the maze of warehouses. I stayed low, circling the structure, slowly letting my eyes adjust to every shadow, every angle, every possible entry point. Rushing in would be stupid. These men weren't trained like soldiers, but there were enough of them to make numbers dangerous. And men who kidnap children don't care about lines. They escalate fast. I paused behind a stack of rotting pallets and watched the two guards again. One laughed at something the other said, completely relaxed. That told me everything. They didn't expect trouble. Good. That's when people make mistakes. I picked up a small chunk of loose metal and tossed it hard toward the far corner of the building. The clang echoed, sharp and sudden. Both guards snapped their heads toward the sound. One cursed and started walking toward it, leaving his partner behind. Split. Exactly what I needed. I moved before the second man could rethink anything. Silent steps, closing distance fast. My hand clamped over his mouth while my other arm locked around his throat, cutting off air and sound in one motion. He struggled for maybe 3 seconds before his body went limp. I lowered him gently to the ground and pulled him out of sight. The second guard came back, annoyed. You see anything? No answer. He stepped closer, confusion replacing irritation. That was his last clear thought. I hit him from the side fast and hard, driving him into the wall, then dropping him with a clean strike. 2 down. Quiet. Efficient. I dragged both bodies behind the pallets and took one of their radios. Static. Voices. Unorganized chatter. Good. No tight command structure. That meant I could move without immediate coordination chasing me. I slipped to the side door and tested it. Locked. Of course. I stepped back, then drove my shoulder into it just enough to break the latch without making too much noise. The door gave with a dull crack. Inside was darker than I expected. Only a few overhead lights on, leaving long shadows across crates and equipment. Perfect cover. I moved through them, slow, controlled, every step placed with intention. A man walked past one aisle, talking on his phone, not even looking up. He never saw me. I grabbed him, pulled him into the shadows and dropped him before he could make a sound. 3. I kept moving. Closer to the center. Closer to the voice I had seen earlier. Marlowe. The name sat heavy now, not just memory but confirmation. And with every step my focus narrowed. Not anger. Not rage. Just purpose. End it? Voices grew clearer. You said it would be easy. It was supposed to be. Then what happened? Someone screwed up, that's what. I reached the edge of the open space and looked in. Marlowe stood near a table, maps spread out, men around him, some pacing, some arguing. He looked older than I remembered, but the posture was the same. Confident. Arrogant. Dangerous in a different way. He wasn't a fighter. He was a planner. The kind that sends others to do ugly things while he stays clean. Until now. One of his men spoke again. What if the kid's father talks? Marlowe smirked. He won't. They never do when they understand the stakes. That was enough. I stepped out of the shadows. You're wrong. Every head snapped toward me. Silence dropped, heavy and immediate. Marlowe's eyes locked onto mine, and for a second I saw recognition flicker. Then calculation. You. Yeah. Me. The room shifted, tension rising like a storm about to break. You picked the wrong family. Marlowe's smile faded just a little. You don't understand. No. You don't. The first man rushed me, trying to close distance fast. I met him halfway, dropping him with a single strike before he even registered what happened. Chaos exploded. Two more came at once. I moved through them like a current, fast, precise, breaking one down, then turning the other into the ground. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Another grabbed a pipe, swinging wide. I stepped inside the arc, twisted his arm, and drove him face first into the table. Wood cracked. He didn't get back up. Gunfire cracked suddenly, loud in the enclosed space. Too loud. Too sloppy. Rounds tore into crates behind me. I moved instantly, closing the distance before he could correct his aim. My hand hit his wrist, redirecting the barrel away, then everything ended for him just as fast as it began. The room fell into a different kind of silence. Not calm. Broken. Marlowe stood alone now, backing up slowly, eyes wide for the first time. You should have stayed out of this. I kept walking toward him. You should have stayed away from my son. He grabbed something off the table, a gun, his hands shaking just enough to betray him. Stop right there. I didn't. You think this ends here? It does. He fired. But fear makes people sloppy. I moved before the shot even lined up properly, the sound snapping past me as I closed the gap. His second shot never came. I grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, the weapon clattering to the floor. He cried out, collapsing under the pressure. Wait, listen, we can talk. No. We can't. You don't understand what you're walking into. I leaned closer, my voice low, controlled. I understand perfectly. You came to my house. You tried to take my son. That's all that matters. His confidence was gone now, replaced with pure survival instinct. There are people above me. Of course there are. That didn't change anything. Names. I need names. He hesitated just long enough to make the next moment inevitable. I tightened my grip and he broke. Talking fast, desperate, spilling everything he knew, locations, contacts, money, routes. I listened, memorizing every piece. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was bigger. But first things first. I released him just enough for him to breathe. You're done. And this. I gestured around the room at the wreckage, the men, the chaos. This is what happens when you come after my family. Sirens echoed faint in the distance, growing louder. Someone had called it in. Good. Let them clean this up. I stepped back, turning away from him, already finished. This part was over. But as I reached the door, his voice came again, weak but filled with something darker. You think this is over? I paused. Then, without turning back. If anyone else tries, they'll end up worse than you. I stepped out into the night air again, cool, sharp, real. The kind of air that tells you something has ended. But not everything. Because now I knew. This wasn't just one man. And people like that. Don't forget. They wait. And next time. They don't send amateurs. The sirens grew louder behind me, cutting through the quiet like a warning to anyone still breathing inside that warehouse. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there. What needed to be done was done. But the weight in my chest didn't ease. Because Marlowe's last words weren't fear. They were truth. People above him. That meant this wasn't over. Not even close. I reached my car and got in, hands steady but mind moving faster than ever. Names. Locations. Fragments of a network now burned into memory. This wasn't some random crew grabbing kids for quick cash. This was organized. Structured. And bold enough to come straight to my door. Which meant one thing. They thought they were untouchable. I started the engine and pulled away just as the first police vehicles turned into the rail yard, lights flashing red and blue, painting the broken buildings in chaos. Let them deal with the aftermath. My job wasn't paperwork. My job was making sure no one ever tried this again. The drive home felt longer. Every street, every passing car, every shadow carried weight now. I checked my mirrors constantly, not out of fear but out of habit. No tails. No movement. But that didn't mean safe. It just meant quiet. Too quiet. When I finally pulled into my street, the house stood still exactly how I left it. Lights off. Curtains drawn. No signs of disturbance. Good. I parked but didn't get out right away. I watched. Counted breaths. Listened. Nothing. Then I moved. Fast to the door, unlocking it, stepping inside and locking it again immediately. My son. I went straight to his room and knocked. It's me. The door opened quickly. You're back. I nodded, scanning him instinctively, checking for any sign anything had happened. He was fine. Relief hit, but I kept it contained. Always contained. Everything's okay. He studied my face like he was trying to read something deeper. Did you find them? Yeah. And they won't be coming back. That was enough for him. He believed me. And that belief mattered more than anything. He stepped forward and hugged me tight. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself feel it. Then I pulled back. Go get some rest. He nodded and closed the door again. I stayed there for a second longer, listening to the quiet inside his room. Safe. For now. I walked back to the living room and sat down, finally letting the stillness settle around me. But my mind didn't stop. It never does. Marlowe's information replayed piece by piece. Names I didn't recognize. Drop points. Accounts. And one detail that stood out above everything else. A meeting. Tomorrow night. High level. That wasn't coincidence. That was opportunity. If this network thought tonight was just a failed attempt, they were wrong. Tonight was the beginning of their end. I stood up again, already moving, already planning. Sleep wasn't an option. Not now. I pulled out a notebook and started writing everything down, organizing it, mapping connections, building a clear picture. This is what separates survival from control. You don't just react. You understand. Hours passed without me noticing. The sky outside slowly shifting from black to gray. Another day. But nothing felt normal anymore. Because it wasn't. I finished the last note and leaned back, looking at the map I had created. The center point. The meeting location. An abandoned office building on the edge of the city. Private enough. Accessible enough. Exactly the kind of place people like them use when they think no one is watching. They were wrong again. I checked the time. Not long now. I needed to be ready. Because tonight wasn't about defense. It was about ending this at the root. I moved through the house one last time, checking locks, windows, everything. Then I stopped outside my son's door again. Still quiet. Still safe. Good. I spoke softly even though he couldn't hear me. This ends today. Then I turned and walked away. The sun rose slowly, casting light across the street like nothing had changed. But everything had. Somewhere out there people were planning, thinking they still had control. Thinking they could take whatever they wanted. They had no idea what was coming. And by the time they understood, night came slow but heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. I moved through the city like a shadow, blending into traffic, stopping where needed, never staying long enough to be noticed. The building came into view just before dusk. Tall broken windows, empty floors, a shell of something that used to matter. Now it was just a meeting place for people who thought they were invisible. I parked 2 blocks away and watched. Cars started arriving one by one, nothing flashy, nothing loud, just careful arrivals spaced out enough to avoid attention. Professionals. That confirmed it. Marlowe wasn't the top. He was just a piece. I stepped out and moved along the side streets, keeping distance, adjusting angles, watching every entrance, every exit. There were more guards this time, positioned smarter, not just standing around but watching lines of sight. Better. But not enough. I circled the block twice, mapping everything in my head. Front entrance covered. Side door guarded. Back alley narrow but open. Rooftop access partially collapsed but usable. That was the way in. I slipped into the alley and climbed the metal ladder bolted to the wall, each step quiet, controlled. At the top the wind hit harder, carrying voices from inside through the broken roof panels. I crouched low and moved to the opening. Below me a large room, dim lights, a long table, and around it men and women dressed clean, controlled, confident. Not street level. Not amateurs. These were the ones pulling strings. I scanned faces, locking them into memory. Then I saw the one at the head of the table. Still. Calm. Everyone else leaned slightly toward him. Power doesn't need to announce itself. It just sits and the room adjusts. That was the one. The real target. Voices drifted up clearer now. The attempt failed. Marlowe underestimated the situation. We will correct that. A woman spoke next, tone sharp, precise. The father is a problem. He should be removed. A few nods around the table. Just like that. A decision about my life made like it was nothing. I felt the cold settle deeper. Not anger. Not fear. Just clarity. You don't wait after that. You act. I shifted position silently and dropped inside, landing behind a column unnoticed. For a few seconds I just listened. Timing matters. Position matters. Then I stepped out. You're right. I am a problem. The room froze. Every head turned. Hands moved toward weapons. But hesitation held them. Because they weren't used to this. Threat walking into the center instead of hiding at the edges. The man at the head didn't move. Didn't panic. Just studied me. Interesting. You got farther than expected. I kept walking, slow, deliberate. You sent people to my house. You tried to take my son. That ends tonight. A guard moved first, trying to flank me from the side. I shifted before he closed distance, dropping him hard and fast. The illusion shattered. Everything erupted. Chairs scraping, bodies moving, weapons coming up. But space was tight and they weren't coordinated for close combat. I used that. Every movement direct, every strike final. One went down, then another. Someone fired a shot, the sound exploding in the enclosed space, but panic ruined their aim. I kept moving, never staying in one place long enough to be surrounded. Chaos favors the one who understands it. And I did. Within seconds the room changed from controlled to collapsing. The woman who spoke earlier tried to run toward the side exit. I cut her off, grabbing her arm, twisting until she dropped. No one leaves. The man at the head finally stood. Enough. His voice cut through everything. Calm. Commanding. The others hesitated. That was his power. He looked at me, not afraid, just measuring. You don't know what you're stepping into. I'd heard that before. I stepped closer. You made it simple for me. You came after my family. That removes every line. He almost smiled. There are always lines. Not anymore. The last of his guards went down, trying to rush me from behind. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Now it was just us. He reached slowly into his jacket. I watched every movement, ready. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small device. You think stopping us here changes anything? It does. He pressed something. Somewhere deeper in the building, a low mechanical hum started. I didn't like that. Not one bit. Fail safe. Data wipe. Or worse. You're too late. He dropped the device and stepped back. I moved instantly, grabbing him before he could create distance. What did you do? Insurance. The hum grew louder. Time shrinking fast. I dragged him toward the table, slamming him down. Stop it. You can't. His calm was gone now, replaced with something darker. Not fear. Acceptance. That made him dangerous in a different way. I tightened my grip. Then you're coming with me. If this place goes down, you don't walk away. For the first time his eyes shifted. That mattered. I pulled him up and moved toward the exit fast. The hum now turning into something sharper, something unstable. Whatever he triggered wasn't just wiping files. This place was about to become a problem for anyone still inside. We reached the hallway just as lights started flickering. You should have stayed away. He muttered it like a regret. No. You should have stayed away from my son. We pushed through the side door into the night air just as a deep rumble shook the building behind us. Windows shattered. Dust burst outward. The structure groaned like it was tearing itself apart. I kept moving, dragging him with me, putting distance between us and the collapse. Moments later, part of the building caved in with a thunderous crash. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. I let go of him only when I knew it was safe enough. He staggered, catching himself, looking back at the wreckage. Years of work gone in seconds. Good. He looked at me again, something different in his expression now. You think this ends it? I met his gaze steady. It ends with you. Sirens in the distance again, growing closer. This time louder. More of them. This wasn't staying quiet. Good. Let the world see. He didn't run. Didn't fight. Just stood there like he knew the game was over. For him it was. For me. I turned away, already knowing what mattered most. My son. That's where this started. That's where it ends. I walked into the night, leaving everything else behind. Because the message was clear now. To anyone watching. To anyone thinking. No one touches my family. And lives to try again. Morning didn't feel like a victory. It felt quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after something big ends and your mind hasn't caught up yet. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window, watching the street like I had 100 times before, but this time nothing moved. No slow cars. No watchers. No shadows pretending to be normal. Just a regular day. And that was the strangest part. The man from the night before was gone, taken by the authorities before the collapse fully settled. He didn't fight. Didn't say much either. But he didn't need to. Everything he built, everything he thought made him untouchable, was gone. Names exposed. Operations broken. People scrambling. That's what happens when something rotten gets dragged into the light. It doesn't survive. I heard footsteps behind me, small, careful. My son. He walked in rubbing his eyes, still waking up, but he stopped when he saw me. It's over. Kids don't ask complicated questions when they already feel the answer. I nodded. Yeah. He studied me for a second longer, like he was making sure I meant it. Then he smiled just a little. The kind of smile that only shows up when fear finally lets go. Good. That was all I needed. He grabbed a glass, poured some water, and sat down like everything was normal again. And maybe it was. Or maybe this was just what normal looked like after you fight to keep it. I sat across from him, finally letting my guard drop just a fraction. Not gone. Never gone. But lighter. There's a difference between being ready and being hunted. That difference was back now. The world outside kept moving, people heading to work, cars passing by, life continuing like it always does. Most of them would never know how close something ugly came to slipping into their lives. And that's how it should be. Some things are better stopped before they're seen. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of the moment. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. A calm voice on the other end measured professional. We need to talk. I almost smiled. Of course they did. People always want explanations after everything is already done. Wrong time. I hung up. Because whatever came next, whatever questions, whatever cleanup, whatever attention, none of it mattered more than this. Right here. Right now. My son finished his drink and looked at me. Can we go out today? Simple question. Normal question. The kind that means everything is finally okay. Yeah. We can. He nodded, satisfied, and got up, heading back to his room. I stayed there a second longer, letting the moment settle. Then I stood up and moved to the door, opening it wide, letting the fresh air in. No fear. No hesitation. Just a house again. Just a home. Somewhere out there people would hear what happened, whispers, rumors, stories that grow bigger with every telling. They'll say a lot of things. They'll get most of it wrong. But one part will stay true. If you come for what matters to me, you don't get a second chance. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and for the first time since that knock at dawn, everything felt still. Not empty. Not waiting. Just still. And that's how I knew it was really over.